There's no doubt that the Indian aviation is flying high. Domestic air traffic rose 10% in October compared to last year. Domestic airlines carried around 12.6 million passengers in October compared to 11.4 million flyers in October 2022. On the face of it, the airline industry seems to have recovered well from the pandemic. But that will not be the full story, and the sector has its own share of significant woes. To discuss the potential of the sector and the air pockets that are threatening the industry, we have two eminent panelists today with us. We have Mr. Dubey, who is a senior advisor with Mckinsey. He's also a former joint secretary with the Civil Aviation Ministry. And we have Mr. Kapil Kaul of Capa, India. Let me start by asking Mr. Dubey, how much do you think the industry has recovered from the pandemic? Because airline has been one of those sectors which had really been devastated. The numbers show significant, kind of a change. But what are the underlying, issues that you feel still dogs the industry?
Thank you so much, Arun. I think the aviation industry is known as the industry of the warriors. Okay, so I was in the ministry when 2020 the COVID broke, and the way the ministry, industry, passengers at large, we got together and we used to have those 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. calls, collaborating with airlines on one side, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Pawan Hans on the other side, and 28 states and UTs on the other hand. And the way the sector is bounced back, I think it's a stuff of case studies. As you rightly said, the numbers are now showing it. It used to be about 12 million per month. That used to be the regular number. I think pre-COVID, we used to do about 140 odd million passengers per annum. And for the first time this year, in the calendar year 2023, January to December, we are likely to cross the 150 mark, which is positive, which is fantastic. So we are going to overtake the pre-COVID numbers. And next year is going to be the upsurge year, and 2025 is supposed to be the breakout year. That's when the Delhi second airport at Jewar, Mumbai second airport at Navi Mumbai, and so many other capex projects which are going around in all the major airports, all of them are going to come upstream. So the summer of 2025 will be a fantastic one. As regards challenges, I think, why don't we first let my good friend Kapil also speak, and then we'll come back to the challenges part. Yeah.
I think you can take the same question, the recovery of the airline.
Yeah, so thank you, Arun. We have had, I think, a devastating 3 years, as we all know. The industry lost about $6-7 billion. There was a demand destruction that we haven't seen before, and not only in India, across the world. And I think the recovery has been pretty sharp. FY23, we more or less reached back to pre-COVID, just marginally short of pre-COVID. We expected to cross 150 million plus. International should also cross pre-COVID in this fiscal. So the bottom line is that the industry is recovering after 3 years plus, both in domestic and international. The airlines have lost a lot of money, the airports have lost a lot of money. Recovery in the physical terms is going to take a long term. But in terms of growth and in terms of traffic coming back and that momentum coming back, I think we're good for this fiscal. It's a little slowdown from October, November than what we thought. It was relatively 13 million plus. Diwali was a little subdued. But I think the momentum of growth will continue, and we are in a good place after a long time.
One of the worrying aspects of the Indian airline industry has been the fact that, the precarious finances of some of these companies. And we have seen how what has happened to Jet Airways at one time. We have seen what has happened with Go Air and now Akasha Air. So what I would like to ask you, Mr. Dubey, is that, what are the, real issues that are dogging, when it comes to, precarious finances doesn't happen just because, they don't have the resources, but it's also because of certain issues like, high aviation turbine fuel, which has been dogging the airline industry for quite some time. How long can the airline industry survive like this?
No, I agree. There are some very structural challenges that our sector faces. And one of the biggest can be summed up in just one line, which is that we have the highest cost structure with one of the lowest fares in the world. Okay, because given our purchasing power position, we have to be very, very conscious of the price. The price is determined by the market, and there's very little that the airlines can do to push that up. And as we bring more and more, the next 1 million or the next 10 million passengers, they will come from middle income segments and from smaller towns and all that. So the paying capacity is a little limited. Whereas the cost just keeps going. And as you rightly pointed out, ATF, of course, is 35-40% of the cost structure. We've discussed ad nauseum over the last decade. I think many of the states, thanks to the push from the government, almost I think 18 or 20 odd states have already brought it down to below 5%. Some of the big states do continue to be in that 20 plus range, which is not fair because this is a raw material and you don't tax the raw material, you tax the fruit. The fruit of aviation, I mean, you don't fly for flying sake, you fly for basically either business or travel, business or tourism. These are only two reasons why typically people fly. So you make money more on the business benefits and the tourism benefits rather than on the raw material. So that's one of the biggest issues. Then there are various other structural issues like airport, there was constrained airport capacity, which is now getting resolved. Most of the big airports are expanding and new airports are going to come up. On cargo side, a lot of reforms have happened. MRO, maintenance, repair and overhaul, it's still a challenge because most of our aircraft are still going out for repairs. A lot of systemic changes need to be done, which we can do a whole afternoon of discussion just on MRO. Pilots we've seen is a big issue because as the big fleets are being inducted, we also need to increase the number of flying schools. Otherwise, most of our young kids, cadets, are being sent abroad. So that adds up to the cost. And last but not the least, make in India on the aircraft side. So we've just been importing most of these as the sector grows and we are bringing in more and more aircraft. These aircraft are all made abroad. There's a lot of sourcing and increasing sourcing from India, but a day should come when we should also manufacture our own aircraft and lease it out of, say, Gift City. Most of the leases also traditionally happen out of Ireland. So, I mean, that's a Tufan mail list of things that we need to fix. And struggle is on, and inshallah, I'm sure sooner or later we'll fix these issues. You know?
In fact, one of the things that one has been hearing for a long time is that in India can be a hub, a global hub for international hub for airlines. But somehow that doesn't seem to have taken off. We have seen a variety of issues. We don't have strong airline. We don't have the voluminous local traffic that is required. We don't have the right infrastructure. So my query to Mr. Kapil Kaul, who has been tracking this segment for several years, is that what is holding India back from becoming this global hub that we all aspire for?
So I think hub is a process that takes decades. You need an ecosystem for it. You have DIAL, which will now have the infrastructure to really do a proper hub kind of a model. And you have Air India, which is now bringing in long-haul fleets, but that's not enough. The whole ecosystem has to be built. Dubai didn't get built overnight. Singapore, 2-3 decades. So I think it's perhaps a myth that we could develop it overnight. It takes a long time. The state government has to take ownership for it. I don't think Delhi doing that to say that, listen, if I make a Delhi a hub, the biggest benefit would be Delhi economy. So we are far from it. Aspirations is good to have. Steps have been taken with airport infrastructure being in place and wide-body aircraft that Air India is going to order over next few years. I think we'll have the basic starting point. But it also depends upon whether Delhi, what does Air India want to do? Air India perhaps would want to do a multi-hub strategy. They will say Delhi, they will say Bombay, they'll say Bangalore. So they may not typically consolidate like we see in Dubai. But the broader point is that the OD market for India is so large. And if I take South Asia as a proxy market for it, I don't know whether Indian airlines would need to develop a hub, which is to take traffic from Australia to Europe or, let's say, Southeast Asia to West Asia. The OD market is so large, 60% of it is taken off. If you redirect it back to some extent, you have enough on the table. What you typically get from an Australia to Europe traffic is maybe closer to 100 million, very large pool. You may pick that up when you need, particularly in off-season. But that's a very diluted traffic. The yields are very poor. The world is focused on that market. I don't really think that India for the near foreseeable future should look at flows from, let's say, Australia to Europe. There's enough market on an OD basis. It has been underpenetrated for 10 years. If we focus on that from a profitability perspective, that may be better. So I'm of the view that hub takes a long time. You may build gateways first. Within gateways, you may have certain corridors that you will build. Hub takes a lot of time, but starting the fundamentals in case we are interested to build a hub are there. But traffic is like Bangalore, New York direct. Hyderabad, New York is a good flight. Hyderabad, Chicago would be, SFO would be a good flight. Chennai, New York would be a good flight. Typically, it would come to Delhi first. But most of these states and the customers want direct flights. Air India wants to take advantage of that. So I think the market is big enough for India to take advantage of the OD traffic, redirect traffic that's gone to Middle East and others. And later on, as we grow along, see how can we tap into, let's say, in Australia to Europe market. But we have enough OD. I don't believe that typical hub, what Emirates does, we need to do. Because they don't have a source market, Dubai. We have about 72 million customers, 70 million this year, may go to 140, then go to 250. We have enough on the table. What we must build is an airport infrastructure which can make must make the airline and airport services to a extent that I don't want to go via Dubai. I don't want to go via Singapore. I have to take a direct flight. The quality of an airline is good. The quality of airport experience is good. The network is developed in a manner that I reach at the right time. As long as those fundamentals are kept in place, I don't think we need to do a lot. So for me, a hub will take a long time, and whether we need it or not, that's a different issue.
Yeah, coming to the point you talked about, the domestic capacity. Of course, there is a huge potential, but it is also true that the country has again gone away from the concept of a low-cost airline. I mean, so many models had been worked in the past, but they have not really sort of taken off, and we have seen how airlines have sort of failed in the past in this particular segment. Flying is still not an affordable kind of a thing for the large percentage of the population. So do you think that we still have the option to look at a low cost flying model that can come out of India?
So first of all, I mean, you did ask Amber about airline failures. There are one aspect which gets forgotten. One is that obviously direct indirect taxes are 20-21% of the total operating cost, depending upon which quarter you take. It could vary if you take quarter one or quarter two. It was roughly about 20% of direct operating cost. That's a big structural challenge, as Amber mentioned, that you have a negative fiscal regime which adds to the cost, and what gets passed on to the consumer is a little higher. But even without the direct indirect tax rationalization, you've seen the data that's coming from the airlines that have closed. The corporate governance issues are, my assessment, very, very poisonous. And wherever there are corporate governance issues to the level that we have seen, where majority of the debt that goes to the company is going outside the systemic leakages, those airlines beyond a point can't stay. You see an Indigo example, $15 million of startup capital, put in another $15 million, it's valued at $10 billion, high corporate governance standard, focused on fundamentals, the results we see. Wherever the corporate governance challenges remain, the airlines will fail. I believe that in spite of this negative fiscal regime, airlines could have been profitable and could have saved from the airlines that have got closed. It's a question that the corporate governance issue to me is much larger than the negative fiscal regime that we seem to be often talking about. And the question second, you talk about low cost. Low cost is going to be a driver. I think 90% plus would be low cost, whether we call it budget or move up the value chain a little bit in terms of let's calling a value here. But I think the low cost airline will be the driver for domestic. Some airlines may think that premium is there as a market for premium, but largely will be more or less low cost driven. And Indigo's example is a case in point to prove that if it is done well, it can serve the customers and can make the airline profitable. But if you have a governance challenge where the leakages are institutional, there are intellectual management capital is very limited, then I don't think you can have an industry which can thrive. So I think, and second point I would just say, which is more important, is that we've seen this industry for about two decades plus. This is the first time I'm really confident that the airline system in India is very strong. The Tata's acquisition by Air India's acquisition by Tata's, to me, is a game changer. I don't think the industry fully understands what it will lead to. So you have two principal players with 90% market share, both well capitalized. They have the ability to fund long term, have a long term strategic focus, want to build world-class airlines. I think we are in for a transition which is permanent, which will change the industry. Obviously, the corporate governance will be much better, of higher standard that in these carriers. I think we are in a good time after a long time where everything we talked about is airline failures. Now there is companies which are investing billions of dollars and have a long-term view that will change everything around it. So, so bottom line, we are at a very good place right now. And I think we are in transition, which will be structural. Anything that goes, let's say the physical part gets addressed, will add more value. But even without that, I think these two airlines can make money. And I think like Indigo made 3,000 crores in Q1. Very soon you will see in a couple of years Tata's making money. So the fundamentals are pretty strong right now.
That was a good point about the fact, you know, how the Tata's entry has been significant, and the kind of huge aircraft orders that they have put in, which was followed by Indigo's equally big record of aircraft orders. So how do you see these, decisions, corporate decisions? I mean, do you think that the whole industry is poised for a giant leap, as we have, you know, said in our caption, our title?
No, absolutely, and this is a giant leap which should have happened 20 years back, because for 20 years both of us have attended umpteen conferences and kept on rattling the same stuff over and over again: structural changes, fiscal corrections, airport capacity, going into the interiors. 2003 was the Naresh Chandra Committee report, which finally became in 2017 the Udan scheme, which is now a PM's flagship program. So a lot of these things, and also Air India privatization, late 90s and early 2000s, we came very close to privatizing Air India. So all these structural changes have been debated, discussed, 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards. And also this whole treating aviation as a rich man's mode of transportation. All this has changed over the last 15, 20 years, and thank God this happened. And also governments would be very wary of talking about aviation, because it was supposed to be a luxurious item. You don't see politicians talking about the golf courses, okay? But what is happening is that the systemic change, the regulatory changes, the fiscal corrections in many states, which have brought down to ATF charges to less than 5%, government support, policy support, and now this Air India privatization, and the huge upsurge in the airport capacity, which as I mentioned, sorry for being repetitive, but next is the takeoff period, and by December, Delhi 2nd and Mumbai 2nd are going to come on board, and the summer of 2025 is when we'll see a huge upsurge. So we're all in for a great time. Just sit back, relax, enjoy the journey. This is something we've waited for almost 2 decades. It's almost, and we both of us are veterans. We feel happy that we are here to see it in our lifetime. Thank you.
You have worked extensively on the drone policy, you know, when you were part of the government. You know, we would like to have your views, because it's a huge emerging sector. And what went behind the crafting of the policy?
No, well, the drone policy, of course, it's a massive change which happened in 2021, because before that, see, when we do policies, it's always done in the context of the situation at that time. And 3 or 4 years back, you were hearing only negative stories about drones. Okay, some strike in, say, Saudi Arabia, or something happening in Iran or Afghanistan. So we only, terror strikes, etc. So you only thought about the negative part. So I won't say that the policy making at that time was wrong, but somewhere between innovation and security took a heavier, that took more weightage. So most of our laws were in favor of checks and home ministry clearance and police clearance and all kinds of stuff. And we realized that this technology is booming. This is the future of aviation. In fact, maybe 20 years down the line, you won't even see a pilot when you enter an Indigo or Air India plane. You might just see computers running the plane, and that a pilot could be on the ground or underground. So it sounds like science fiction, but it may happen. I mean, space stations, spacecrafts are always all managed from the Earth. So massive change are going to happen, and it has huge impact at the grassroots level also, whether it's agriculture, road, railway projects, power lines, telecom lines. I can just go mining. You can just go on and on. In fact, Arun, there's hardly any sector where it does not have an impact. So after a lot of churning and debate, finally we decided that we're going to go completely in favor of growth, while keeping an eye on safety and security matters. And that's how the drone rules of 2021 came. Then the PLI scheme, within 2 weeks, the cabinet approved the PLI scheme. Normally it takes 8, 9 or 10 months. Within 2 weeks that happened. Then after PLI, we had the drone certification scheme coming out. And then within 6 months, we had the import ban, which is very difficult in today's times. Import ban on foreign drones coming in. So I think the whole ground was laid, and now it's up to the entrepreneurs. And we're seeing the numbers almost doubling each year. The revenue of the drone industry, this is doubling every year. So I see a great future ahead. Yeah.
Great. So while we talk about these things also, I mean, is there anything that you would particularly like to be, to see a change in the industry? I think we'll start with Mr. Kapil Kaul. We don't have much time, but you can, sort of sum up. What are the key things that you would like to have?
I think we are at a very exciting place. I mean, I have mostly been, let's say, not critical, but possibly always had a critique on many things. I think in my 20 years, I think first time I'm feeling that you have a stable airline system. And the impact of that is going to be game changing. We'll see it in 2 years. It'll change the entire aviation ecosystem, travel ecosystem permanently. And I think for the government to privatize Air India and take a 60,000 crore haircut is my assessment the biggest reform. It's a very boldest reform, the biggest reform, and I think that will change the industry. So that's number one. First time, at least for the next 7 years, we have airport capacity that we never had. We had demand coming and no airport capacity. This time, the airport capacity, largely because of COVID as well, is ahead of time. We have almost 500 million airport capacity in metros. So we are well placed as far as the airport capacity is concerned. Third, which is critical, I think the travel is becoming, the penetration is increasing. People are traveling more for leisure, business, work, extra, and we are just on the tip of the iceberg. So the fundamentals are there. I think India must take advantage of it. But there's the other side which possibly brings challenges, is that we have 2 airlines having 90% market share. What are the institutional measures in terms of competition, in terms of consumer interest, that needed to be done? We have to finally recast DGCA. We've been saying it for about 2 decades. You cannot have DGCA the way it is with this kind of a growth. You'll have to overhaul BCAS. You'll have to bring more strategic competence in the regulatory and policy making level, because we are entering an era we have never seen. And the space of growth is going to be so overwhelming that whilst we are happy on one side that we have a stable airline system, airport infrastructure is there is demand which is exponential, it will continue for years. If the other side continues to be in a legacy mode, and frankly, I think we'll have more fundamental challenges than before. So I'll urge the government that if you could do a reform like Air India, which is my assessment the boldest reform that I've seen, it shouldn't be difficult for this government to say, I'll overhaul DGCA, I'll overhaul BCAS, I will hive off ANS, I will do those institutional reforms, which I think the sector deserves. And if we are able to do it, let me tell you, by 2030, this will become one of the key pillars of our economy. It is going to be a key pillar of the economy, but without these institutional measures, I think we'll be left behind. That's my view.
Amber, what is your take?
So I guess Kapil has very well summed up most of the changes. So there's the fiscal part, the institutional part, but I would also again reiterate at the risk of repetition, serving in India, maintenance in India, research in India, cargo in India, train in India. So it's not just make in India, but all these other services which all need to be promoted, and we have to, it's basically government, regulators, industry, and other stakeholders working together to make this happen. Lot of words have been spoken, but I think it's time now to shift focus, because airlines and airports and Air India, most of those issues are now resolved. And the last part is on the drones. I guess we are happy to have a production linked incentive, but I think now we need to focus on the IP part. This is mostly assembly drones, most of the parts coming from other neighboring countries. But somewhere we also need a RLI, if I may put it, a design in India, or a design linked incentive, or a research linked incentive. Unless we own the IP, we'll otherwise just remain assemblers and sellers. And these are 3 or 4 of my thoughts on what needs to be done. Thank you.
Excellent. I think, we have heard both sides of the airline story from 2 of the finest experts in the aviation industry. Thanks a lot, gentlemen, for being part of this.